All right, dealing with absolute value. Okay, and right on top you see we have a kind of a definition. I don't know if it's perfect, but it works pretty well. Distance, a number is from 0. The distance, a number. And so when you're thinking about distance, well, distance is always positive. Okay? Distance, it says it right here. Distance can never be negative, so it's always positive. That means the absolute value is always positive. I mean, you think about it. How far is 4 from 0? 4 spaces. How far is negative 4 from 0? Also 4 spaces. Okay? So now we're going to deal with evaluate. Remember, evaluate is to actually calculate the things. Real quick, these are the absolute value marks, those straight lines. But I always like to do, and I'm going to rewrite it over here, I always like to do my absolute value. They look too much like a 1. So when I would do it, I would make the absolute value bigger. Okay? So just a little word to the wise. Make your absolute values a little bit bigger than your normal characters. That way they stand out. And I think in the second problem we're missing an absolute value. So right here, these symbols say absolute value. Okay? So plug in 6, plug in -3, and calculate. I'm going to go absolute value -2. When you plug in stuff here, I like using parentheses because it's multiplication. Plus 5, -3. Okay, and this whole idea of making things positive, we can't make things positive until we get to the end result. So don't say, oh, well, absolute value turns everything positive. No, no, no. You have to actually calculate it and then do the absolute value. So we're still doing order of operations, parentheses, exponents, multiply and divide left to right, add and subtract left to right. So if we look inside, the absolute value is kind of in this parentheses mark. Do things inside the absolute value first. So we're going to go here and multiply. -2 times 6 is -12. -12 times -3 is positive 36. And then we can go over here, there's another multiply. 5 times -3, -15. Get that 5 right. Some people will put, and I'll do it here in little red. Some people, when they go plus a negative, they'll put that negative in parentheses, kind of highlighting that it's a negative. Not essential. So -2 times 6 is -12. -12 times -3 is positive 36. And then 5 times -3 is -15. What is 36 plus a -15? Or in other words, plus a negative means minus. What is 36 minus 15? Positive 21. What is the absolute value of positive 21? Positive 21. Once we get here and we're finished, it will always be positive. If it were a -21, the answer would still be positive. But we don't do that until we're finished calculating. Now, number 2, I'm going to say that we should have had an absolute value at the end of it. So add that in at the very end right here. That seems to be missing. This is a negative. Absolute value 5 times -2, because A is -2, plus 3 parentheses 2 times A, which is -2, times B, which is -3, minus 1 parenthesis absolute value. Okay, so we've gone in, and for A, and B, we have substituted in these values. Now, this out here, I want you to be good careful. This negative, what does it mean? This negative right here means -1 times the absolute value. So when we're all done, we're going to multiply by that -1 right here. And I kind of made it look ugly, but let's work on the inside first. So I got a negative absolute value. Multiply. 5 times -2 is -10. Plus. Okay, we got a parentheses in here we got to work with. 3 parentheses. 2 times -2 is -4. -4 times -3 is +12. So when I looked inside, I multiplied this right away, but then I worked inside of this little parenthesis. 2 times -2 times -3 got +12. I'm going to subtract here. -10 plus 3 times, what is 12 minus 1? 11. And so now -10 plus 33. 3 times 11. What is -10 plus 33? What's 33 minus 10? 23. We get a negative absolute value of 23. This is the same thing as saying -1 times the absolute value of 23. What is the absolute value of 23? It's just +23 times -1. -23. The only reason we get a negative out of this is because there is a negative right there on the outside of the absolute value. So what do? Calculate the inside of the absolute value first. Then when you're done, take the absolute value of that number, basically taking that number, making it a positive, and then you can do anything on the outside. Let's jump over here. I like these better, less numbers to plug in. Number 4 looks kind of ugly, some decimals, we'll have to deal with that. But let's do this here. 23 minus absolute value 3 plus 4 times 2. Okay, so absolute value is parentheses. So we want to work inside here first. 23 minus absolute value 3 plus 4 times 2 is 8. What's 3 plus 8? 11. 23 minus absolute value 11. Absolute value of +11 is +11. So we have 23 minus 11. 12. This one over here, 1.4. Be careful with these decimals now. I might rely a little bit on a calculator here. We'll see. 5 times -3 plus 0.6. So again, we're going to work in here. Some people are going to want to do this right outside. 1.4 minus 2.5. And they'll go, oh, it's -1.1. No. This is 1.4 minus 2.5 times the absolute value. And order of operations says we have to do the multiplication before we can do the subtraction. So these two numbers cannot be combined. We got to start in here. 5 times -3 is -15. So 1.4 minus 2.5 absolute value -15 plus 0.6. Okay. No calculator, no calculator. -15 can be written as -15.0. Everything has a decimal. If you don't see it, it's at the end with a 0. Plus 0.6. So when you look at that, what is that going to become? negative 14.4. Think of it this way. You owe negative 15 means you owe me $15. But you have 60 cents. So if you owe me $15, but all you have is 60 cents, and you pay me 60 cents, how much do you owe? You owe me $14.04, 40 cents. Okay? I find money works great with these things. So this is negative 14.4. Now here's where this part right here comes into play. The absolute value is always positive. So once we get it down to a single number, whatever that number is, the absolute value becomes a positive. So now this is 1.4 minus 2.5. Look, I change it now. Now it's no longer an absolute value. The absolute value converted it to a positive number, and now I have this. Now, I'm not going to even mess with the rest of it. That's a lot of decimals, so I will rely on a calculator. Now, when I do that, I put it all in at one time, just like so. But the big key, this becomes a positive without the absolute value. That's the big key right there. We get negative 34.6. Now this one I don't really like so much. I'm going to come up here, I'm going to put a sad face because a lot of decimals and extra stuff. I wish we had some without the decimals and stuff. It would have been more clear. I'm going to write in here that I used a calculator. So over here, absolute value of positive 11, just a positive 11. But the absolute value of negative 14.4 is positive 14.4. And then we multiply it, and then we do 1.4 minus. Last two. Yay. Fractions. Boy, even more fun, huh? Love it. Wonderful. Let's plug it. Don't do anything different. Plug it in, and we'll see what happens. Now, with this, okay, every number can be written as a fraction. And if I'm multiplying or adding fractions to numbers, I like everything to look like a fraction. So what I'm going to do, come in here and make this 12 over 1 and make this 16 over 1. Okay? And so let's come off to the side and do a little work here. What is negative 16 over 1 here times 3 over 4. Once you make it into fractions like that, you can do some cross-canceling. 4 goes into 16 4 times. 4 goes into 4 once. So we can cancel like that and then multiply straight across, and you get negative 12 over 1. So this inside here is just negative 12. All of this right here is just negative 12. Now let's work on this other part. Shush. 12 over 1 times negative 1 over 12. What does that equal? Work on that. Victor Duran is leaving. Okay, so what happened there? Get the worksheet. What happened here, 12 goes into 12. You can cancel diagonals, so this just comes out to be -1. -1 over 1, which is just -1. So this right here becomes -1 minus absolute value of -12. The absolute value of -12 is just 12, so -1 minus 12. Absolute value always makes it positive, so just this much is going to turn into a positive, but the minus on the outside stays, and so this becomes -13. And that's like, whoa, wait, that's not so bad. So whenever you think fractions, put numbers over 1 and try to see if things can cancel out. All right, last one. Let's see if this one's a mess. Plug things in. So absolute value 2 minus parentheses -1/2 minus 6. I'm going to put it over 1 because I already know we have fractions. 3 over 4 absolute value plus Victor. (18 over 1 times -2 over 3). Okay. Is it necessary to put the 1? No, but I find it easier to do the problem when I make things look like fractions. Okay, so we're doing parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, subtract. Parentheses and absolute value are in the same family, so we do the absolute value part inside first, and we do this part first, meaning we're going to multiply. Okay, this gets to be a mess. 4 and 6 don't go into each other, but 2 does. But we'll take care of that later. 4 does not go into 6. What is 6 times 3? 18. So we're going to put 2 minus parenthesis -1/2. 6 times 3 minus 18. 1 times 4, 4. I'll deal with that in a second. I can deal with this out here at the same time. It's outside and not related. It's multiplication. 3 goes into 18 how many times? 6. So 6 times -2 is -12. So that's okay. I probably should reduce this. 18 over 4 reduces to what? Kind of important. 2 goes into both those. Divide them both by 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And now I have what I'm supposed to have, common denominators. Focus right here. What is -1 minus 9? What's -1 minus 9? -10. -10. -1 minus 9 more is -10. So we get -10 over 2, absolute value, minus 12. What is -10 divided by 2? -5. Absolute value 2 minus 5. Now we don't have any more fractions. So dealing with this slowly, and you might even say, this is real messy, I need to go off to the side to deal with a little bit before I put it back in. What's 2 minus 5? What is the absolute value of -3? positive 3. What is 3 minus 12? Messy problems. Hopefully we don't get a lot of these fraction ones. But the idea, let's remember, absolute value always comes out positive. So when you get down to a single number, you can get rid of the absolute value by just saying the positive value. Always evaluate the inside of the absolute value like you would a parentheses. Evaluate anything step by step to get it to a single number. Then once you eliminate the absolute value, you can work it with the outside. Okay, hopefully we don't get a lot of heavy ones like this, and we'll be okay.